Hey guys, I wanted to do a few word problems with you to help you study for your Pythagorean theorem test. So let's look at a few problems. Okay, here's the first one. A baseball diamond is a square with sides of 90 feet. What is the shortest distance to the nearest tenth of a foot between first and third base? My first piece of advice for solving word problems is always to draw a picture of your own, even if you're provided one, of kind of what's going on in the problem. So I've drawn my baseball diamond here, roughly, and I'm going to go ahead and start labeling it. So it told me that this was a square. That means that all of these angles are right angles. It also told me that all the sides were 90 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and label all of these 90. The question asked me what was the distance to the nearest tenth of a foot between first and third. So I'm going to draw a little dotted line between first and third. Okay. So looking at this, you might think, well, what does it even have to do with Pythagorean theorem? I don't even see a triangle. This is a square. But actually, if you look at this, when we drew this dotted line, we split this into two triangles. So here's one of those triangles. Can you guys see that blue marker? Okay, so there's one of the triangles here, and it is a right triangle because I'd already labeled this as a right angle. Okay. So now I'm going to take this, I'm just going to kind of spin it around so it's easier for us to write on and see. So this, I'm just going to slide it over, was a right triangle. The legs measured 90 feet. And they're asking me, so this was my dotted line, they're asking me the length here between first and third. Okay. What they're actually asking us is to solve for the hypotenuse C. So now I can plug this into my theorem. Both of my legs measure 90 feet. And I don't know the length of C. And now I can evaluate this. So 90 squared plus 90 squared equals C squared. I'm going to get a calculator so that I don't make a mistake. So if I add these together, I get 16,200 equals C squared. But they didn't ask me what C squared was. I need to solve for C. So my last step is going to be to take the square root on both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of 16,200. And I get 127.279 ... equals C. Okay. Now, the original question asked for this distance to the nearest tenth of a foot. So tenth means one decimal place. So the 2 in this case, but the 7 is going to bump that up. So my actual answer is 127.3 feet. Okay. So there is your first question. Let's look at two more. Okay, second question. In a computer catalog, a computer monitor is listed as being 19 inches. The distance is the diagonal distance across the screen. If the screen measures 10 inches in height, what is the actual width of the screen to the nearest inch? And then it says draw a picture to help you. I went ahead and drew what was supposed to be a laptop. Once again, it's a sketch. It doesn't have to be perfect. and I'm going to label it. So it told me that the diagonal distance of the screen was 19. So my diagonal distance is 19. Then it said that the height of my screen was 10. And it did say that it was rectangular, so I know that my angles here are going to be all 4 right angles. The question was, what is the actual width of the screen? Now, once again, just like the first problem, you might be thinking, well, what does this even have to do with Pythagorean theorem? This is a rectangle, it's not even a triangle. But if you look at it closely, this actually has split this into two triangles. So here, if I just look at this half, that is a right triangle. So I'm going to redraw it. My diagonal was 19, the height was 10, and they're wanting to know what is the width here. What is the width? Now, in this example, they've given us the C already. So actually, because they gave us the diagonal, they're wanting us to find a leg measurement. So I'm going to call this leg A. Remember that it doesn't really matter with the legs whether this is A or this is A or this is B and this is B. What's most important is that the diagonal distance, what's across from the right angle, is the C, the hypotenuse. Okay? So let's plug this into our theorem. I don't know my one leg measure, but I do know my other leg measure is 10, and that my hypotenuse is 19. Once again, I'm going to use a calculator because I don't want to mess up in my video. Do not want to have to re-record this. So I'll do 19 squared is 361. 10 squared is 100. Okay? And I don't know A squared. Now this is just a two-step equation really. So I need to get the variable by itself. The way to do that, first I need to get rid of this 100. It's adding 100. So to cancel that out, I'm going to subtract. So I get A squared is 261. And then of course, to cancel out this square, I need to square root. So the square root of 261 is 16.155 and so on. Okay, now let's refer back to the original question to see how they asked us to round. So it is important that you're being careful about rounding. So this says, what is the actual width of the screen to the nearest inch, to the nearest whole inch? So I want to round this to the nearest whole number, which in this case would be 16. Now the 1 here is not going to cause the 16 to bump up. So I can say that the width of my computer screen, so it has a width of 16 inches. Okay, we have one more problem we're going to look at, and then we'll be done. So 2 joggers run 8 miles north and then 5 miles west. What is the straight distance to the nearest 1/10 of a mile they must travel to return to their starting point? So let's draw a little picture of what's going on. So I've drawn my starting point is a little house, and it first said that they went 8 miles north. Then it said they went 5 miles to the west. And the question was, how far away are they from their original starting point? So they're wanting to know, what is this diagonal distance here? Now we're assuming that they made perfectly a right angle turn when they change directions. So that is going to be a right angle. And here's my triangle. Now, since they want to know the diagonal distance, they've already given us the legs. That means we're trying to solve for the hypotenuse C. And C is going to be our longest side. So, for example, if this were a multiple choice question, you would know that the answer would have to be larger than 5 and 8, right? Because it's the longest. So if one of the answer choices was 7, you would know that was wrong because it has to be bigger than this side here. The C is always going to be the longest side. So let's plug this into our Pythagorean theorem formula and solve this. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So a and b, remember it doesn't matter which one's which, okay? They're both legs. So I'm going to do 5 squared plus 8 squared equals c squared. 5 squared is 25. 8 squared is 64. I'm going to add these together, and I get 89 equals c squared. And once again, just to make sure that I don't make a mistake, I'm going to use a calculator. For my final step here, I need to get rid of the square, so I'm going to square root on both sides. The square root of 89 is 9.433 and so on. And the original question said to round. So let's double check how it said to round. It said round to the nearest tenth of a mile. So the nearest tenth means that we want one decimal place. In this case, it's a 4. That 3 is not going to change that 4. So my answer is 9.4 miles. And that's a wrap for this video. I hope this was helpful.